All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Before we begin, I'd like to let all of you know that we will be recording this session, so please keep your microphones off unless you're instructed to mute. So let's begin. So welcome to Module 1 of the Fall 2025 Stormwater Management Design Review course. My name is Manesh Patel. I'm an environmental engineer within the Division of Watershed Protection and Restoration. I'd like to welcome you to the latest Stormwater Management Design Review course. Each module will have a moderator, and today that will be Cheng-Yi Wu. Staff will be presenting as a four-part course the key elements of the Stormwater Management Design Review process in order to assist you in complying with the stormwater management rules at NJAC 7:8 and as required by the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permits, or MS4 permits for short. We're presenting this course fully online via Microsoft Teams. Before I present the course agenda, however, I'd like to go over a few course rules. I would like to give notice that this module and the other subsequent modules will be video recorded. The videos will be posted on YouTube and links will be included on the Stormwater Management webpage for future reference. Web link to our webpage was emailed to you in the invite, which will bring you to our PowerPoint slides of each presentation, and they will also remain available on the webpage for some time to be reviewed and or downloaded for future reference. In order to receive a certificate of completion and the certificate of the Professional Engineers Continuing Professional Competency Credits, or CPCs for short, you'll need to complete all 4 modules, including all of the quizzes. If you don't complete all 4 modules in this training session, you'll need to make up the missing module in the next training session before we can issue you the certificate of completion and the certificate of CPCs. The schedule is compressed from our classroom setting, so we will move along at a brisk pace with short 1 to 2 minute breaks between the individual presentations. Although we are allowing time for questions at the end of each presentation, if you could please use the chat function for each meeting to enter your questions as we go. We'll be reviewing the chat as we go along and the plan to answer the more general type of questions during the presentation. However, more individualized and site-specific questions will need to be addressed offline after the class. Also, with so many people online for this training, enrollee microphones will be muted, but we can unmute if you do want to ask a question verbally. This course will focus on the current stormwater management rules. If you do have questions or comments regarding the NJ Pact rule proposal, please visit the department's NJ Pact website. This link will be posted in the chat. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, there will be an online quiz at the end of each module that you will have around 10 to 15 minutes to complete. You must take the quiz during the time allotted, and you cannot go back after that time has ended. This is in part a tracking mechanism in order to provide credit for the course. After each quiz, we will present the correct answers in our quiz review. So please try your best so that we can grade ourselves on how well we've covered the material. If you are not able to download the slides from the link in the email, they can still be accessed under this website, which will be pasted in the chat by staff. You may want to keep this open in a separate tab or window. Take note that these are the newest slides and will look a little different from those on the public-facing page. That is the one where the completion list is posted. These slides will eventually replace those older ones once we process the videos we're making. Here's a snapshot of what the handouts page for this edition of the class will look like. You can download slides for each presentation and each module. The links are embedded in each blue box, so just click the box that matches whichever presentation you would like to view. And now this brings us to our agenda for the course. The agenda for Module 1 begins with Rachel Werner, who will provide the introduction and the federal background. Peter Pliantos will then present the stormwater overview of basic concepts and terms. You will then hear from me on maintenance requirements. and Dr. Richard McGee will present on manufactured treatment devices. Each of the modules include a quiz to be taken online during the time allotted. We will then close the quiz and review the quiz questions. We will be providing links and QR codes to the quizzes in the chat and on the slides. It is suggested you use your cell phone camera, focusing on the QR code that will be shown on the screen, and that will take you to the quiz on SurveyMonkey. If you're going to be taking the quiz on your computer, be sure to open the quiz link in a new window or tab so that you will also remain in Microsoft Teams. Module 2 for Thursday will start with Rachel, who will present the stormwater calculations. Lisa Schaefer will then present the soil testing criteria, which was previously published as Appendix E of the BMP manual, but is now incorporated as Chapter 12 of the BMP manual. She will also go into the green infrastructure fact sheet. And then we will administrate our second quiz of the session immediately afterwards. Module 3 for Tuesday, September 16th, will start with Rachel and I presenting how to review a project number 1. And then Lisa will be presenting part 2 of how to review a project. Peter will then present the groundwater mounding analysis as per Chapter 13, along with some examples. And then we'll have our Quiz 3 and Quiz 3 review. And lastly, Module 4 will take place on September 18th. The first 2 presentations will cover green infrastructure examples. After that, a comprehensive plan review example presentation will follow, which will then be followed by some common design issues we've seen in the past. And after these 4 presentations, we will then administer Quiz 4. After that, we will have an overview of the Municipal Stormwater Program, followed by the updates made to the BMP manual and Stormwater webpage, plus the training-related information to close out this training. One very important reminder before we begin, after the class is over, we will be emailing out a link to an evaluation survey only to those who have completed all 4 modules, including all of the quizzes. We are required to collect an evaluation in order to issue continuing education credits. Only after you submit your evaluation survey, you will be sent your certificate of completion and your PE credits once staff creates them. That should hopefully occur about 2 to 4 weeks after the class has finished. With that being said, we will start with the introductory history lesson and basics of the permits. So please stand by while we switch over to Rachel.
All right, thank you, Manesh, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Stormwater Management Design Review course. My name is Rachel Werner, and today I will be providing you with a brief history of the federal basis for the Municipal Stormwater Regulation Program, as well as a brief introduction to some of the permit requirements that you will hear more about throughout the training. And as Manesh said, please type your questions into the chat as we go along, and Changi will be moderating that and answering questions throughout the presentation. So let's get started. Shown here are some of the terms we frequently use in our stormwater program, and this presentation will provide an overview of the history of these words and how they are a part of the program. To start, we'll look back to about 77 years ago. The Federal Water Pollution Control Act of 1948, also known as the FWPCA, cleared the way because it was the first major U.S. law to address water pollution, and it authorized the Surgeon General to prepare comprehensive programs for reducing the pollution of interstate waters. It also authorized the Federal Works Administrator to prevent discharges of inadequately treated sewage and other waste into interstate waters and tributaries. This is because, over the years, our rivers had become increasingly more polluted with sewage, oil, debris, and chemicals. Now let's fast forward to about 20 years later in Cleveland, Ohio. The Cuyahoga River runs north through the heart of Cleveland towards Lake Erie and was a historical shipping route. At the time, Cleveland was emerging as a major center for manufacturing, and because of this, the river became heavily affected by industrial pollution to the point that it was covered with oil and debris. And on June 22nd, 1969, sparks from a passing train were all it took to start a fire. It was reported that these flames reached up to 5 stories in height. Now, this was not the first time it happened, as there were more than a dozen fires over the preceding years. However, this was the event that sparked people's attention. A few months later, the National Environmental Policy Act, aka NEPA, was signed into law on January 1st, 1970, creating the EPA. In 1972, amendments were made to the Federal Water Pollution Control Act from 1948, the one we talked about earlier, with the resulting legislation becoming known as the Clean Water Act. In Section 402 of this act, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, aka NPDES, program was created, which prohibits the discharges of pollutants from any point source into the nation's waters except as allowed under a NPDES permit. Because of this program, the EPA is authorized to regulate discharges into the nation's waters by setting limits on the effluent that can be introduced into a body of water from an operating and permitted facility. NPDES also established requirements for what a state must do to obtain approval to implement and operate its own program. And in 1982, New Jersey received federal authorization to implement various NPDES program components, including for a state pretreatment program to regulate federal facilities and issue general permits. This program is known today as NJPDES. This is the framework through which NJDEP regulates the discharge of pollutants to the surface and groundwaters for the entire state. And 1 year later, in 1983, New Jersey proposed and published a new rule establishing effluent limitations for discharges to surface waters of the state, and for indirect discharges into domestic treatment works, including discharges resulting from different precipitation events. 4 years later, in 1987, the Water Quality Act was passed, which called for increased monitoring and assessment of water bodies to ensure that water quality standards were being met. And in 1990, the EPA published initial permit application requirements for certain categories of stormwater discharges, which was called Phase 1. Nearly a decade later, Phase 2 provisions were published that initiated stormwater management requirements for municipalities, public complexes such as large public colleges, prisons, hospital complexes, and military bases, and highway agencies. These provisions covered basic EPA permitting requirements and created a mandate for these entities to develop and implement a program to reduce discharges of pollutants from their respective stormwater systems. These systems are referred to as Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems, or MS4s for short. These provisions also covered combined sewer overflows, where commingled stormwater and wastewater are discharged, and industrial stormwater discharges, where stormwater in contact with industrial pollutants is discharged, each with their own separate set of regulations. The portion of the NJPDES rule pertaining to the Municipal Stormwater Regulation Program is found in Subchapter 25 of New Jersey Administrative Code 7:14a. In February 2004, these rules were amended, establishing Tier A and Tier B designations for all 557 municipalities in the state of New Jersey that have MS4s. Most municipalities were designated as Tier A, which is generally for the more densely populated municipalities, while the rest were designated as Tier B. However, as of July 2022, all Tier B municipalities were reassigned to Tier A and are now regulated under the 2023 Tier A permit. The public complex permit authorizes discharge from small MS4s that are owned or operated by a county, state, interstate, or federal agency at a public complex located entirely or partially in a municipality that is assigned to Tier A or in a municipality that receives a waiver, And the highway agency permit authorizes discharges from small MS4s that are owned or operated by a county, state, interstate, or federal agency at a highway or other thoroughfare, including a maintenance or service facility or rest area for such a thoroughfare. The federal program requires that MS4 stormwater programs include 6 minimum control measures. The New Jersey MS4 permits require the same 6 things, except they are called minimum standards, and they are found in Part 4, Sections B through G of your permit. The 6 minimum standards include, number 1, public involvement and participation, including the requirements for public notice. Number 2, local public education and outreach, which can include labeling storm drains, training on building rain barrels, and other measures to increase public awareness on pollution prevention. Number 3, construction site stormwater runoff, which requires construction activities to be authorized under the Industrial 5G3 construction activities permit. Number 4, post-construction stormwater management in new development and redevelopment, which requires a permittee to develop, update, implement, and enforce a program to address stormwater runoff. This includes the necessary plans and ordinances in keeping with the requirements of the stormwater management rules. Number 5, pollution prevention and good housekeeping, which includes community-wide ordinances, community-wide pollution prevention measures, best management practices at maintenance yards and ancillary operations, and stormwater training requirements. And last but not least, number 6, MS4 mapping and scouring and illicit discharge detection and elimination, which includes mapping MS4 infrastructure stormwater features, controlling localized stream scouring, and tracking down and eliminating illicit discharges of pollutants. In addition to ensuring compliance with all 6 minimum standards in Part 4, Sections B through G, the MS4 permit requires the permittee to incorporate into its stormwater management program any requirements for additional measures that are identified by the state as required of a permittee, and optional measures such as BMPs that extend beyond the requirements of the permit to further prevent or reduce pollution to state waters. For more details on these measures, you can take a look at your permit in Part 4, Section I. Now, looking more closely at the 4th minimum standard that we talked about a few slides ago, the permittee is required to develop, update, implement, and enforce a stormwater management program. The purpose of the stormwater management program is to address the negative impacts caused by development, some of which are listed on this slide and will be covered in more detail in the next presentation. This program is what designers must follow for projects over a certain threshold in size. And to be clear, federal regulations require that these impacts be addressed, and New Jersey is authorized to issue permits with these same requirements. Therefore, the responsibility to review projects under its stormwater management program falls directly on the permittee, who must ensure that these impacts are adequately reduced. Now, this required post-construction stormwater management program must include certain elements. So let's take a look at what those elements are. Each box on this slide represents a required element of the post-construction program. The first box is a municipal stormwater management plan, which is required under New Jersey Administrative Code 7:8, also known as the Stormwater Management Rules, Subchapter 4. Every municipality is required to have a stormwater management plan, which is adopted into the master plan and used for long-term planning. The second box is a Stormwater Control Ordinance, or SCO for short, which is required under both the Stormwater Management Rules and the Residential Site Improvement Standards, which are found in New Jersey Administrative Code 5:21. Every municipality is required to have a SCO, which is the regulatory tool to implement and enforce standards on a project. Tier A permittees had 1 year from their plan adoption date to adopt a SCO and submit all of this to the county review agency for approval. The Stormwater Management Rule amendments adopted on March 2nd, 2020 had a delayed operative date of 1 year so that municipalities could update their SCOs to match the rule amendments by March 2021. And in the case of the most recent 7:8 amendments adopted on July 17th, 2023, municipalities had 1 year to adopt and make effective a SCO that is in accordance with those same rule amendments by July 2024. Now, please note that the department has actually created a model SCO for municipalities to use as a template. So let's take a look at what's in that model. First and foremost, the SCO must include the design and performance standards for stormwater management measures found in subchapter 5 of 7:8. These standards will be covered throughout the rest of this training, and they include: number one, the requirement to use green infrastructure to meet design and performance standards, which replace the implementation of the 9 non-structural strategies. Number two, how compliance with the groundwater recharge requirement is demonstrated. Number three, how stormwater runoff quantity control may be addressed. Number four, how water quality is to be addressed and the rainfall distribution for the New Jersey Water Quality Design Storm. Number five, the calculation method to be used to calculate stormwater runoff and groundwater recharge. And last but not least, number six, the detailed maintenance requirements. The SCO must also address the safety standards found in subchapter 6 of 7:8. Now, please note that the SCO can be stricter than the model, but it cannot be less stringent. And all reviewers must follow the SCO. So if you are a municipal consultant, you must know what is in the SCO of each town for which you review projects. Coming back to the post-construction program requirements, every municipality must then enforce their own SCO, review applications for compliance with their own SCO, ensure long-term operation of BMPs, and make sure the required maintenance is performed, which for municipalities also includes privately owned facilities. The last box also applies to public complexes and highway agencies. Please note that this is not a one and done scenario, it's a cycle, because the municipal stormwater plan must be updated periodically to include whenever the master plan is re-examined. So the cycle will start over. Now at the bottom of the slide, you'll see that it says audit by NJDEP. In 2016, the MS4 permitting program began performing compliance assistance audits of municipalities to determine how well they were demonstrating compliance with their permit and where they needed help, whether with language in the SCO, following the SCO, or other permit requirements. We are now partnering with enforcement in our audits, meaning that the department can now issue a notice of violation, or NOV, for an instance of non-compliance with the permit requirements. Some other consequences of non-compliance. As mentioned before, if you are not following all of the MS4 permit requirements, it can lead to an enforcement action by NJDEP. Even if a major development project was previously constructed, it may still not fully comply with the SCO if the reviewer did not conduct a proper review, and the municipality can still be issued a notice of violation for failure to comply with the post-construction program. EPA can conduct audits as well, and these audits have historically been an in-depth and lengthy process that can result in sizable fines and penalties levied against a permittee in accordance with the Clean Water Act. In fact, some of the past penalties have ranged from 4 figures to millions of dollars, depending on the type of violation. The department would like to prevent this from happening. And this training is designed to show reviewers how to review a project so that the permittee can stay in compliance with the permit. This means that the permittee has the authority to ask applicants for revisions in order to enforce and follow its program, as well as the permit and the rules. To summarize, we are here for reasons dating back to the Clean Water Act. The federal NPDES program authorized New Jersey to implement a stormwater permitting program for its municipalities, public complexes, and highway agencies, while the state NPDES program details what must be done at the local level to eliminate the discharge of pollutants from MS4 and to implement the required post-construction stormwater management program. The post-construction program also requires municipalities to develop, implement, update, and enforce their SCO, and to ensure that long-term maintenance is being performed. Lastly, this course is a requirement of all MS4 permits, and all reviewers need to complete this training once every 5 years. And that's the end of this presentation, so thank you for your attention. And if you want or need to contact the MS4 permitting group with permit-related questions, the email address is listed on the slide. It is the Stormwater Manager at dep.nj.gov. Now, before we wrap up this portion of the presentation, if you have any last-minute questions, please add them to the chat. And it looks like we're good on questions. So up next is Peter, and he will discuss the basics of stormwater runoff, the impacts of development, and the rule requirements to mitigate these impacts. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rachel. I will share the next presentation. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Pliantos, and in this presentation, I will be providing you with a basic understanding of what stormwater is, its interactions with the terrain, and a brief look at the stormwater control measures in place through the Stormwater Management Rule. This presentation is organized into 3 parts. The first part discusses the hydrologic cycle and what impacts land development has on it. Second, we'll introduce some terms relevant to managing stormwater runoff. In the third part, we'll discuss the standards found in the Stormwater Management Rule, NJAC 7:8, to mitigate some of the adverse effects land development has on the hydrologic cycle. We'll begin with land development's impacts on the hydrologic cycle. Since stormwater is the focus of this presentation, let's define it up front. Stormwater is water resulting from precipitation, including rain and snow, that runs off the land surface, is transmitted to the subsurface, or is captured by separate storm sewers or other sewage or drainage facilities, or conveyed by snow removal equipment. So now that we've defined stormwater and what produces it, we can move on to what can control it. That is, the conditions that increase or reduce runoff. Listed here are some basic site conditions that act as a type of control on stormwater. In many cases, the first point of contact for stormwater is vegetation. Dense vegetation scatters precipitation, making it less likely to coalesce and flow. Rough surfaces also inhibit flow. Steep slopes will have an opposite effect and will increase the velocity of flow. Lastly, the surface material itself and even the underlying layers can affect the amount of runoff produced by a site. Pavement will produce a greater volume of runoff than a grassy field, for example. Next, we'll look a little deeper into the effects each one of these site conditions has on rainfall. Beginning with vegetation. When it rains on a tree, the precipitation falls through the leaves and branches, runs along branches and stems or trunks, and then contacts any other shrubs, bushes, and leaf litter lying on the ground. Some of the moisture that penetrates to the soil can then be taken up through the roots of the plants. The leaves of the plants can also absorb moisture. And release of moisture back to the atmosphere then occurs in a process called evapotranspiration. Next, we'll take a look at soils. The properties of the underlying soils can contribute to stormwater runoff. Movement of water into the pores or voids of soil is called infiltration. The rate of infiltration can vary with soil composition, and for soils comprised predominantly of clay can be almost zero, whereas for sands, the rate can be 10 inches per hour or more. When the voids become full of water, the soil becomes saturated. Saturated soils cannot absorb any more water, so there is more runoff. Many of the stormwater practices used on developments are designed based on the assumption the soil is fully saturated, so we can best predict the amount of runoff produced and manage it safely. The condition of surface roughness has an effect on the velocity of stormwater as it flows, with higher surface roughness impeding the velocity. The actual topography also has an effect on the movement of stormwater. Steep slopes shed runoff more quickly than those that are more gradual, and uneven terrain provides opportunities for surface detention and the slowing down of stormwater runoff, as illustrated in this graphic. Putting what we have covered together, we can then discuss the hydrologic cycle. For an undeveloped site, a large portion of the precipitation, represented by the largest arrow on the graphic, supports vegetation, resulting in evapotranspiration or infiltration, which maintains groundwater flow. Typically, there is little runoff and it flows over land to a water body. An equivalent volume of precipitation as to that received by the undeveloped site falls onto the same site post-development. Since the site has considerably more impervious ground coverage as compared to before, there is much less infiltration and therefore depletion of groundwater base flow, as well as slightly less water returning to the atmosphere via evapotranspiration. This site also has a stormwater collection system that discharges to the water body. The insides of stormwater pipes are much smoother than vegetated surfaces, so the higher volume of collected runoff reaches the water body more quickly, potentially causing downstream flooding. Higher rates of runoff can also mean increased erosion and transport of sediment. Development can also cause higher levels of nutrients, like pet waste and fertilizers, pollutants such as vehicle exhaust compounds, pesticides and industrial chemicals, and heavy metals like copper from brake dust. So in summary, the three primary impacts land development has on stormwater and the hydrologic cycle as a whole are: 1. Increasing the volume and rate of stormwater runoff through an increase in impervious areas with lower roughness coefficients. 2. Degrading the quality of downstream water bodies through increased suspended solid concentrations and increased nutrient loadings. And 3. Depleting groundwater and stream base flow, which is also due to increased impervious ground coverage. Now we'll move on to the second part of this presentation, where we'll define some terms relevant to the Stormwater Management Rule and introduce some basic related information. We'll begin with defining each of the terms on this slide. First is green infrastructure. The Stormwater Management Rules, adopted March 2nd, 2020, included the requirement to use green infrastructure. This is the definition of green infrastructure as noted under Section 1.2 of the rules. Part of this definition specifies that green infrastructure manages stormwater close to its source, which plays an important part in the Stormwater Management Rule. Along with the stormwater management measure being located close to the source of runoff it's designed to receive, green infrastructure must treat the stormwater runoff or store it for reuse. The rules define motor vehicles and surfaces on which they are operated as they contribute to pollutants and stormwater runoff. Motor vehicle surface means any pervious or impervious surface that is intended to be used by motor vehicles and/or aircraft and is directly exposed to precipitation. including but not limited to driveways, parking areas, parking garages, roads, racetracks, and runways. And in the next slide, we'll define just exactly what is considered a motor vehicle. Motor vehicle means land vehicles propelled other than by muscular power, such as automobiles, motorcycles, autocycles, and low-speed vehicles. For the purposes of this definition, motor vehicle does not include farm equipment, snowmobiles, all-terrain vehicles, motorized wheelchairs, go-karts, gas buggies, golf carts, ski slope grooming machines, or vehicles that run only on rails or tracks. Building on the definitions from the previous two slides, a regulated motor vehicle surface means any of the following, alone or in combination. 1, a net increase in motor vehicle surface, and or 2, the total area of motor vehicle surface that is currently receiving water quality treatment, either by vegetation or soil, by an existing stormwater management measure, or by treatment at a wastewater treatment plant, where the water quality treatment will be modified or removed. And just to note, areas that are only for emergency use and are regularly gated from motor vehicle traffic may be excluded from a site's total regulated motor vehicle surface. A regulated impervious surface means any of the following, alone or in combination. 1, a net increase of impervious surface. 2, the total area of impervious surface collected by a new stormwater conveyance system. 3, the total area of impervious surface proposed to be newly collected by an existing stormwater conveyance system. And or 4, the total area of impervious surface collected by an existing stormwater conveyance system where the capacity of that conveyance system is increased. Note that for the purpose of this definition, a new stormwater conveyance system is a stormwater conveyance system that is constructed where one did not exist immediately prior to its construction, or an existing system for which a new discharge location is created. This now all comes into play with the next slide, which is the definition of major development. The rules adopted in 2020 incorporated into the definition of major development the time frame within which the cumulative impacts of a development must be considered when determining if the current development will qualify as a major development, subject to the requirements of the rules. Additionally, the key terms that affect the classification of major development are disturbance, impervious cover, and motor vehicle surface. The definition reflects that the department considers the cumulative total of a number of items as contributing to what makes a major development. Those items are disturbance and creation of regulated impervious surface since February 2nd, 2004, and creation of regulated motor vehicle surface since March 2nd, 2021. This is done without double counting overlapping regulated motor vehicle and regulated impervious areas. However, for the purposes of a municipal stormwater management plan and stormwater control ordinance, major development is limited to projects that ultimately disturb 1 or more acres of land. The municipality may adopt a more stringent definition of major development to align with the definition in NJAC 7:8 1.2. All right, so just wanted to take a minute to emphasize the situation where a large lot is subdivided into several smaller individual lots, each less than 1 acre, and each sold and built upon separately. As the definition of development in the stormwater management rule states, subdivision in and of itself is a development. if the disturbance, the increase in regulated motor vehicle surface, or the increase in impervious surface of each individual lot summed together meet the threshold of a major development, the subdivision itself is considered a major development, with each individual lot being subject to the requirements of a major development. The municipality or MS4 permittee must review the proposed development for those subdivided lots as a whole. Here are some additional terms relevant to understanding the design and performance standards. Infiltration is the permeation of stormwater into the soil by filtration. Groundwater recharge is precipitation that infiltrates into the soil and is not evapotranspired. Hydrograph, in the context of stormwater runoff analysis, is the graph depicting the flow of runoff versus the time passed at a specific point of analysis. And design storms, which will be covered further on the next few slides, are theoretical storm events based on precipitation data with an average recurrence interval of 2, 10, and 100 years. So let's talk a little about design storms. Through a frequency analysis of rainfall depths and intensities from past precipitation events, the likelihood of a storm occurrence can be determined using probability analysis. However, a precipitation event being referred to as the X-year storm does not mean that this storm can only happen once every X number of years, nor does it preclude a larger storm event from also occurring that year. This table lists the probability of a particular storm occurrence and its corresponding chance of happening, expressed as a percentage in a single year. This is what is meant by the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms. The top storm listed in this table is the storm with a 1% chance of occurring in a given year. This is the 100-year storm. At the bottom of the table is the 2-year storm, meaning it has a 50% chance of happening in a given year. Now that we understand the likelihood of a design storm event occurring, keep in mind that one thing we do have is lots of data for these storms. County rainfall data is one source used in the calculations. The link for this data is shown in the header. When reviewing for a municipality, it's best to check the SEO to see if this data is used. However, this is only one of the sources allowed under the rules. The preferred choice for storm data can be found on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's NOAA National Weather Service or NWS website. Click on New Jersey on the map to get started. I won't go through all the steps here. Instead, do read Chapter 5 of the New Jersey Best Management Practices Manual, which has the step-by-step directions and additional graphics. The Stormwater Management Rules, adopted on July 17, 2023, includes some updates to the rainfall data used in stormwater runoff calculations. Studies by the Northeast Regional Climate Center and the DEP show that the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms for most counties have experienced increases in rainfall depth since 1999, when the original rainfall data was collected. So, current precipitation adjustment factors and future precipitation change factors have been implemented and are applied to the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms in certain circumstances. The current precipitation adjustment factors, found in Table 5-5 of the rules, adjust the outdated rainfall data from 1999 to reflect what we are experiencing today. For example, the precipitation depth for the 10-year design storm for Hudson County, retrieved from the NOAA NWS website, should be multiplied by 1.05 to get the current 10-year design storm precipitation depth. The rainfall data applied with the current precipitation adjustment factors will be the current storm events and the rules regarding stormwater runoff calculations. The future precipitation change factors, found in Table 5-6 of the rules, update the rainfall data from 1999 to projected levels for the period between 2050 and 2099. For example, the precipitation depth for the 100-year design storm for Burlington County, retrieved from the NOAA NWS website, should be multiplied by 1.32 to get the projected 100-year design storm precipitation depth. The rainfall data applied with the future precipitation change factors will be the projected storm events and the rules regarding stormwater runoff calculations. The current and the projected storm events will be mentioned several times throughout this presentation, so keep an eye out as we move on to the next section. In the last part of this presentation, we'll take a look at the design and performance standards in place to address the adverse impacts of land development that we discussed previously. These standards are found in the Stormwater Management Rule, Title 7, Chapter 8, or 7:8. As a reminder, here is an overview of those adverse effects of land development previously discussed. Under the current rule, there is a requirement to mitigate these adverse impacts using green infrastructure, which acts to reproduce as closely as possible the natural hydrologic cycle, but more on that requirement later. We'll now address how we mitigate these effects in turn, beginning with the runoff quantity control standards in place to address the increase in volume and rate of stormwater runoff. There are three runoff quantity control options. The full text of the first can be seen here. Note that the water droplet is the icon used in the BMP manual for this design and performance standard. In order to meet this quantity control option for a given design storm event, the post-construction runoff hydrographs for the current and projected 2, 10, and 100-year storm events must be bounded by and not cross, at any point in time, the pre-construction runoff hydrographs for these same storm events. As mentioned earlier, the current 2, 10, and 100-year storm events are the rainfall data from NOAA applied with the current precipitation adjustment factors, and the projected 2, 10, and 100-year storm events are the rainfall data from NOAA applied with the future precipitation change factors. An example scenario that meets this standard can be seen here, where the post-construction runoff hydrograph, shown here in gray, is contained entirely within the bounds of the pre-construction runoff hydrograph, shown in teal. And an example scenario that does not meet this standard can be seen here, where a shift in timing results in the post-construction hydrograph exceeding the bounds defined by the pre-construction hydrograph. The second runoff quantity control option, seen here, is unlike the last quantity control option in that this option is a comparison of the current and projected peak flow rates for the pre- and post-construction hydrographs, and not a comparison over the entire hydrograph duration. However, the analysis required to meet this option is much broader in scope and more detailed than the analysis required to meet the previous option or the next option, as we'll see shortly. The analysis needed here must demonstrate that no flooding will occur at or downstream of the site. This has to assume full development under existing zoning in the drainage area. That extends beyond the site, both upstream and downstream, within the HUC 14 area. Because of how detailed the analysis required is, this is the least chosen option to meet the runoff quantity control standard. The third runoff quantity control option, shown here, is similar to option 2 in that it is a comparison of the current and projected peak runoff rates for the pre- and post-construction hydrographs. But, unlike option 2, the analysis required is less detailed because post-construction peak runoff rates for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm events are limited to 50, 75, and 80% respectively of the pre-construction peak runoff rates. This rate reduction is sufficient to demonstrate runoff quantity control, and the offsite analysis, as required in option 2, isn't needed. This is the option we see chosen most of the time. There is an exemption from the quantity control standard. If stormwater runoff from a project discharges within a tidal flood hazard area, and it's clear that the increased volume of stormwater runoff will not lead to downstream flooding, then the site would be exempt from the runoff quantity control requirement. But it must be demonstrated that no downstream flooding would occur. Now we'll move on to the water quality standards in place. When a development proposes a quarter acre or more of regulated motor vehicle surface, stormwater management measures for water quality control are required. Why is that? Developed sites typically do not have the surface roughness to slow down runoff. This means there generally is not enough time for any pollutants to settle out, resulting in direct discharge to water bodies. The Stormwater Rule includes design and performance standards for water quality best management practices, or BMPs. And the rules focus on two pollutants, total suspended solids, or TSS, and nutrients. TSS includes sediment and other pollutants that can be removed from stormwater through filtration. This is important because high TSS levels impair water bodies. Nutrients are generally a result of fertilizers and animal waste. The two nutrients of concern are phosphorus and nitrogen because they overstimulate plant growth in aquatic environments, which results in algal blooms and a reduction in dissolved oxygen concentration in water. The current rule requires a developed site's stormwater runoff be treated to 80% TSS reduction and the removal of nutrients to the maximum extent feasible. Also, just to note that the trigger for water quality control in 7:8 is a quarter acre of regulated motor vehicle surface, but local SCOs might have a stricter measure as was mentioned in the last presentation. So definitely check the local SCO. In order to meet the 80% TSS removal requirement, stormwater runoff from the water quality design storm must be treated through the use of BMPs. The water quality design storm is a storm event with a custom rainfall intensity distribution that results in a total rainfall depth of 1.25 inches in 2 hours. The custom distribution can be found in the Stormwater Management Rule 7:8. The gold percent sign is the icon used in the BMP manual for this design and performance standard. Some BMPs remove more TSS than others, so that each type may have its own value or even a range of TSS removal. The percentage identified in the manual is only awarded to BMPs designed and constructed in accordance with the information in the manual. Also, if a BMP is not properly maintained, its ability to provide water quality treatment may be impaired. There is also an exemption from the quality control standard. The requirement to reduce TSS does not apply to any stormwater runoff in a discharge regulated under a numeric effluent limitation for TSS imposed under the NJIPD's rules. If there is a separate NJIPD's permit, it has to cover the same area and the same runoff flow that would have been subject to the runoff quality standard. Now we'll move on to the third set of standards in place, which address the reduction in groundwater due to development. Earlier, we defined groundwater recharge as that portion of runoff that travels down past the root zone of plants. The stormwater rule provides two options for development. The full text of option 1 is posted here. To meet this option, a development must match the existing annual volume infiltrated on the pre-developed site. This option requires careful analysis, and unfortunately, we still see a lot of mistakes in the analyses performed during the local review of calculations. The second option requires the designer calculate the increased runoff volume that will be produced by the development from the projected 2-year storm and infiltrate that amount. This generally requires a lot of stormwater be infiltrated, and this may not be easy to do if a project is going from a lot of vegetation to a lot of impervious cover, particularly if the soil was very well drained to start. The projected 2-year storm event is the rainfall data for the 2-year storm from NOAA applied with the future precipitation change factor for the 2-year storm. Additionally, the brown shield is the icon used in the BMP manual for this design and performance standard. There is an exemption from the groundwater recharge requirement that is applicable to only previously developed portions within an urban redevelopment area. Previously developed is defined as areas devoid of woody vegetation. And for an area where woody vegetation has newly taken root, it's no longer considered developed. And just to note, we see a lot of compliance issues regarding the groundwater recharge standards, mainly due to improper soil testing. But that will be elaborated upon in a later presentation. The rules require that green infrastructure, or GI, BMPs, be used to address the requirements for groundwater recharge, stormwater runoff quantity control, and stormwater runoff quality. Subsection 5.2 of the rules includes 3 tables listing BMPs and how they may be used to meet the design and performance standards. Since GI must be located close to the source of runoff, small-scale GI BMPs require limitations on the contributory drainage area. As noted in the last bullet on this slide, municipalities may approve alternative designs, but they must match the GI definition and follow other applicable limitations. Each of the tables identify columns indicating whether a BMP may be used to address stormwater runoff quality, quantity control, or groundwater recharge. Note that the fill color in each of the tables corresponds to the color of the title text in the BMP manual. Table 5-1 is green, corresponding with Chapter 9 of the BMP Manual. Table 5-2 is blue, corresponding with Chapter 10. And Table 5-3 is black and gray, corresponding with Chapter 11. The last column is the separation required from the seasonal high water table, assuming the soil testing procedures in Chapter 12 of the BMP Manual have been followed correctly. Note that Chapter 12 was formerly Appendix E in the BMP Manual. Table 5-1 lists GI BMPs that may be used to meet the groundwater recharge, stormwater runoff quantity control, and stormwater runoff water quality design and performance standards, provided that the GI BMP is designed in accordance with the BMP Manual. Some of the GI BMPs cannot receive runoff from motor vehicle surfaces and therefore do not address water quality, like cisterns and green roofs. Others do not attenuate the discharge of stormwater runoff from the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms, so they cannot meet the quantity control requirement, like dry wells. And there are certain MTDs with a vegetative or soil component that meet the GI definition. But not all MTDs are GI. A listing of MTDs that meet the definition of GI are NJCAT verified and certified by the department can be found on our website. Lastly, these systems are typically smaller in scale, and dry wells, GI MTDs, pervious paving systems, small-scale bioretention systems, small-scale sand filters, and small-scale infiltration basins all have a limited contributory drainage area that they can treat, as defined in NJAC 7:8 5.3b. BMPs in Table 5-2 can be used to address stormwater runoff quantity control. These can have drainage areas that are larger than the drainage areas of BMPs listed in Table 5-1. These BMPs may be used to meet water quality and recharge only if a waiver or variance is granted from NJAC 7:8 5.3. BMPs in Table 5-3 always require a waiver or variance from NJAC 7:8 5.3 before they can be used to meet any of the design and performance standards. It is not anticipated that these BMPs will be used much in the future because of what is required in order to grant a waiver or approve a variance. As for some of the BMPs noted on this table, blue roofs don't have a reuse component, and extended detention basins are typically large and also require additional treatment to meet water quality standards. The majority of manufactured treatment devices, or MTDs, currently do not have a soil or vegetative component, so they fall into this table. Subsurface gravel wetlands and wet ponds not designed with beneficial reuse are also listed on this table. The regulations under subsection 5.2F specify that BMPs designed in accordance with the BMP manual are presumed capable of providing treatment necessary to meet the design and performance standards under the rules. However, anything that is not designed in accordance with the BMP manual is considered an alternative design. As with all major development projects, these alternative designs must be reviewed by the review agency, and in these cases, the DEP must be notified of the review agency's approval of the alternative design. The BMP manual is always updated to align with the current rule. Shown here is a snip from our BMP manual webpage listing out the chapters for specific BMPs. The BMPs listed under these chapters correspond to the BMPs listed in the tables under subsection 5.2 of the rule, with BMPs from chapters 9, 10, and 11 corresponding with BMPs from tables 5-1, 5-2, and 5-3 respectively. Next, we'll take a look at an example cover page from a BMP chapter. As we said, Chapter 9 contains all of the GI-BMPs listed in Table 5-1. Shown here is the cover page from Chapter 9.8, which is for small-scale infiltration basins. And it's a typical example of the chapters for the various BMPs listed in subsection 5.3 of the rules. At the top of the page is an introductory statement that provides an overview of how the BMP addresses pollutant removal and the rate at which it removes total suspended solids, or TSS, from stormwater runoff. The first table on the page is also an overview, and it identifies the design and performance standards of the rules for which the BMP can or cannot be used. This is where you see the icons we discussed earlier for each of the design and performance standards. If you are not familiar with the BMP, this is a good place to become acquainted with how the BMP complies with the rule requirements. In this case, the small-scale infiltration basin, when designed in accordance with all the design criteria in the chapter, is approved as a GI BMP. It can be used to address stormwater runoff quantity control when designed as an online system. It can be used to meet the groundwater recharge requirement, and it has a TSS removal rate of 80%. The other tables below this first table, although not shown here, provide additional design criteria explained in the chapter. To reiterate, BMPs are awarded the TSS removal rate stated in the BMP manual only if they are designed in accordance with the BMP manual. That includes meeting the requirements for pre- and post-construction soil testing and a full maintenance plan, which Manesh will address next. A later presentation in Module 3, titled How to Review a Project, will elaborate on how to determine if a BMP meets the design and performance standards. Module 4 will also include further discussion on and examples of evaluating GI BMPs. In summary, in the first part of this presentation, we covered some of the adverse effects land development has on the hydrologic cycle, including increasing the rate and volume of stormwater runoff, degrading the quality of downstream water bodies, and depleting groundwater. In the final part of this presentation, we briefly covered the design and performance standards in place to mitigate some of the adverse effects of land development. Standards such as the 3 water quantity control options, the water quality requirement to remove 80% of the total suspended solids and nutrients to the maximum extent feasible, the 2 groundwater recharge options, and the requirement to meet those 3 standards using green infrastructure. All right, I want to thank everyone for their attention. Should you wish to contact me, here is my information. And I'm going to check in with our moderator to see if we'd like to address any questions.
We do have questions in chat, so I will reply those questions in chat. So now we can take a 10 minutes break. Please come back at 2:23. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back from our break, and we will now continue on with the next presentation. So far we have covered the history of stormwater regulations and the basics of the MS4 permit. You may recall though from earlier the slide with the 5 post-construction stormwater management program requirements. One of them is to ensure the long-term operation and maintenance of BMPs. So let's get into that a little bit more. First, we'll look at why maintenance is so important. Second, we'll take a look at the historical background for the responsibility of ensuring maintenance. Then we'll get into the responsibilities of the Tier A municipality, public complex, or highway agency. And finally, we'll go over what should be in the maintenance plan and how to review it. So BMPs are pollutant removal mechanisms, as you know, and if they stop working according to their design, or if they even fail, there could be serious consequences that impact the environment. Since BMPs are designed to remove trash, debris, and sediment, they can often get clogged if maintenance is not performed. That means the drain time of a parking lot, for example, or whatever else is upstream may even be longer, which could cause flooding. It can also mean a basin takes longer to drain, which can lead to a possible creation of a mosquito breeding ground. Plus, they can attract unwanted wildlife or can even lead to complaints from the public. All of this stuff is something we really want to avoid. So here are a couple examples of poorly maintained BMPs. The top image here has trash and vegetation collecting in it, so when another storm occurs, particulates will be transported downstream. If you take a look at the bottom picture, the lawn depression, it's not draining properly. This inundation could result in bare soil areas and wind erosion when it dries. If it doesn't drain, then algae could become established, and this could prevent, let's say, an infiltration basin from draining. Here are a couple examples of properly maintained BMPs. The top picture is of a rain garden, and the bottom picture is a green root. Both are well maintained and clear of any debris and trash. There's no visible signs of improper drainage that would compromise the BMP's functionality. So these are just some nice examples of maintenance here. So here's a question for all of you. Based on what you see here alone from the same site, does this look like a ponded infiltration basin or a constructed wetland? Well, if you visited this site without knowing what was designed, you might think everything is okay. However, we have seen the plans and this wasn't actually approved as an infiltration basin. Now, based on the presence of the wetland vegetation and the standing water, the right type of maintenance was obviously not performed and it became what you see now. So at this point, the basin would need repairs or maybe even in retrofit. When BMPs are improperly maintained or neglected, the consequences can include water quality impairment, potential flooding issues, failing embankments or the potential for safety concerns, erosion, health issues that could occur from, for example, mosquitoes, like I said earlier, or even financial impacts such as a decreased property value. They can become a headache for a permittee, which is why proper maintenance needs to be performed. So now let's take a look at the historical background for performing maintenance. The responsibility to perform maintenance is not a new requirement, as you can see from the 1990s Stormwater Control Ordinance model. The ordinance is designed to comply with the maintenance requirements in the stormwater management rules. An intent of this was to establish responsibility for continued maintenance, repair, and safety of stormwater management facilities before they're even constructed. The model ordinance issued in 1990 has required the responsible party to be the property owner of the project, a government entity. or other legally established entities such as a homeowner association. It does not impose the responsibility on a homeowner of a single lot unless the homeowner owns all of the lots in that development. So the responsible party should not be a single homeowner. The Model Stormwater Control Ordinance stated that an individual owner of a single lot in a development cannot be responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater management system of an entire development. The responsible party must be a homeowners association or similar permanent entity. So we'll take a look at some examples of this and see how they're applied a little later on in this presentation. So just keep this in mind. Well, then what are the permit requirements regarding maintenance of stormwater BMPs? As was previously mentioned, the Tier A, public complex, and highway agency permits require that the permittee ensure that adequate cleaning, long-term operation, and maintenance of BMPs are taking place. Under the municipal post-construction stormwater management program, you can start with an inspection program that includes notification of the responsible parties. A municipality can opt to enact penalty provisions into its ordinances as a step towards enforcing compliance. Or they can even create a licensing program to offset inspection costs. The permit requirements for ensuring long-term cleaning, operation, and maintenance provided are divided into two classes based on ownership or operational status for the Tier A public complex and highway agency permit. The first group is facilities owned and operated by municipality. They can be, for example, a town hall or some sort of library complex. The four elements required for this group are shown here, and they can be found in Part 4, Section C1 of the Tier A permit, Section C3 for the public complex permit, and Section C2 for the highway agency permit. Inspection and maintenance must follow the plans or be performed more frequently than that's stated on the plans. A logbook needs to be maintained to show compliance with this section. If you are looking for more specifics, there are more details of this in the permit, which you can read further about. Continuing on, the permittee also must certify annually that these facilities are properly functioning. And lastly, improper functioning facilities where repairs were not made must be documented and prioritized, so a schedule must be maintained. The permit citations are in parentheses for the Tier A, public complex, and highway agency permits, respectively. The second group consists of those facilities not owned or operated by the municipality. And some examples of this can include a retail complex or even a housing development. The permit requirements are found in Part 4, Section C for facilities not owned or operated by the permittee. This is not a new requirement, and the way it is now written is to clarify what has been required previously. The permittee is required to ensure maintenance is performed according to the plan, or even more frequently than the plan states. And again, a logbook must be maintained of the actions taken to enforce compliance, and these details are required. Again, for more information on this subject, please refer to your respective permit. Compliance with the permit requirement to ensure long-term cleaning, operation, and maintenance starts with the reviewer assessing the plans. Otherwise, the BMP may not even function as it was intended, or its performance may decline. Approving a weak maintenance plan creates potential problems for the permittee to enforce the performance of maintenance and may lead to the possibility of a permit violation. The review is a key element to ensuring long-term operation and maintenance. For reference, the SCO includes the detailed requirements for a maintenance plan, and these are also found in the stormwater management rules in NJC 7:8. The NJDEP BMP manual includes further details if you want further reference. If you're using the review checklist from the Tier A guidance document, the maintenance portion starts at the bottom of page 17. These are just crop snapshots from the 2 pages just to get the information into a single page. Section C here applies to Tier A, public and highway agency permits. Before the end of the presentation, though, I'll also show you some of the other documents that are available online that can assist you in the review of the maintenance plan for a project. And there's also more information in Chapter 4.1 of the Tier A guidance for stormwater facilities maintenance. This is part of the table from that chapter that lists the implementation schedule for these minimum standards for a Tier A MS4. Another part listing more of the minimum standards. I'm not going to read these to you, but they are certainly there to assist reviewers. In the final part with more minimum standards, the permit language is very similar for public complexes and highway agencies. We just haven't prepared a guidance document for them right here. So if you want to put things in perspective, an inadequate review can really wreck things. The duties of these 3 parties that you see here on this slide, they have to mesh together. So not requiring the details of the maintenance plan can push the burden on the stormwater coordinator or DPW facilities maintenance office, or it can even create an issue for DEP enforcement. So here's an example of a judgment issued against a municipality and the responsible party for not enforcing the stormwater management plan that was approved by the municipality. A lot of complaints were made because maintenance on an infiltration basin was not being properly performed, and this led to the basin clogging, odors, and flooding of a neighbor, which is something that we really don't want to have happen, and that's something we try to avoid. Since we would like to avoid such legal issues, let's talk about what should be in a maintenance plan so that we know what to look for when we review one. I'm going to start with general information, show some examples of what a maintenance plan should not look like, and then we can get into more specifics. So the rules specify the maintenance plan must include details for the design shown on the construction plans, lists of tasks and the schedule for performing them, plus cost estimates. Those are also required. The name and contact information for the responsible party must be clearly shown. This person or even party must perform both types of maintenance. So let's review what falls under preventative versus corrective maintenance. So the first type of maintenance is preventative, which is the regular tasks that keep a BMP functioning as it was intended to be. So this can involve quarterly inspections, grass cutting wherever it's appropriate, trash clearing, replacing vegetation that's failing to thrive, and even snow removal. Corrective actions are those that may be needed should failures start to occur, such as a periodic replacement of the sand bed and the sand filter, or it can even be in response to a major event, such as a major rainstorm, a drought, a car accident, or a high wind event, just to name a few. The plan must require that a logbook of all maintenance activities be kept so that the inspection can confirm this is being done. The inspection records must be reviewed annually. They might even give clues that something is starting to fail or not work properly. The review should confirm that an annual evaluation of the plan is specified, And then during the inspection, the permittee should confirm that this is taking place. Chapter 8 of the BMP manual focuses on maintenance, in particular page 2. On page 3 are other items for consideration and the procedures that must be followed. Retrofitting information can be found on the next page of chapter 8 as well, so you can take a further look into that over there. Chapters 9, 10, and 11 include specific maintenance details for each type of BMP. So, for example, there are specific maintenance tasks associated with a small-scale bioretention system. You would have bi-weekly inspections, perimeter grass mowing. Those are just a couple. Another example is if you're doing GI with plantings, you would need to make sure that they're being watered, especially in the first year when maintenance will be a little higher. I mentioned procedures to be followed. One such procedure is the requirement to record on the deed information about the maintenance plan, and that identifies the responsible party. And that would include the name, the address, and the phone number. The maintenance plan must be recorded with the parcel where the stormwater management measure is located. Any change in the responsible party information due, for example, to a change in property ownership must also be recorded on the deed. The information must also be updated after project construction is completed. Now, let's look at some bad examples here. If the stormwater management plan consists of a single sheet or is part of a plan sheet, this is a real red flag for the reviewer. Remember, the rules require schedules of the various types of maintenance tasks, an equipment list, cost information, along with a logbook to record the actions performed. Therefore, there is no way a complete record can be made on a plan sheet, nor would maintenance staff actually record observations and completed tasks here. So this would be an example of a very weak plan, and therefore the reviewer has the authority to request revisions so that the permittee can comply with the requirements of the permit. Now, imagine you are reviewing a 55-page maintenance plan for, say, a constructed wetland, and you open the table of contents and you see this. Now, you may think, well, they have a 55-page plan, they have preventative procedures, but if you look closely at the headings, A for grass cutting, F mechanical components, and H stormwater detention facility, this will indicate to you that the maintenance plan may not reflect the actual design and require some revisions. What this really illustrates is that the reviewer has a responsibility to check the details that's provided in the plan so that the permittee meets the permit requirement to ensure long-term operation and maintenance. In this case, this is an actual approved maintenance plan that had absolutely nothing to do with the constructed wetland that's shown on the approved plan. So think of it this way. A good maintenance plan is going to contain 3 essential pieces: information, planning, and education. From the maintenance plan, the reviewer and maintenance staff must be able to know what to look for, where the BMPs are, and how to get there, when and how to perform the maintenance tasks, and what training is needed to successfully follow this plan. Under the information section, a complete inventory of the various BMPs should be provided, including the type, location, and if there's any outfalls. It should be easy to find the water surface elevation for normal conditions, as well as the design storms in relationship to visible elements in the BMP, if it stores or attenuates the discharge of stormwater. In this case, the drain downtime should also be included. If there is an infiltration component, what is the benchmark permeability rate so that the maintenance staff can check whether the system is failing? And then if there is an MTD, the warranty, the owner's manual, those should also be included. The second essential element is planning, which paints a complete picture of what should be done by maintenance personnel. We would not want someone to, say, for example, mow a bioretention system with a meadow, thinking it was an overgrown detention basin. Planning includes the schedule of tasks, the tools needed for each task, access information where sediment or trash is to be taken, and if it requires dewatering, where that is going to occur. If there is an internal component and it is destroyed by, let's say, a large storm, maintenance staff should be able to correctly repair or replace it. I mentioned collected sediment. Planning includes how to transport it and what information, such as a receipt, must be retained. Planning includes the individual costs plus the annual cost for each task. To make sure this information is part of the maintenance plan when you do review it. The third element is education. Maintenance staff must be trained on safety measures, inspection methods, the various tasks, and the use of appropriate tools and equipment. Maintenance must also know what to record and where to file the records. Education includes knowing what records to keep. Also, keep a backup of the records in another location. You never know if the original records could be destroyed somehow. Now that the reviewer has checked the maintenance plan for accuracy, it is important to know whom the responsible party should be so that they can be contacted when an issue arises. For a public complex or highway agency, the permittee is this party, but under the TRA permit, it can be different people or one or more organizations. Obviously, it should be the developer during construction or a public entity wherever appropriate. Transfer of the responsibility can be to an HOA in a residential development, an owner or a tenant in a non-residential development, another public agency, and only to a single homeowner or tenant in the event the individual is the sole owner of the entire residential development. If you take a look at NJAC 7:8-5.8C, it actually expressly forbids this. No homeowner can be held responsible for maintaining a basin in a residential development unless they own the entire development. So speaking of which, let's look at some examples of how this can be applied. So here we prepared some scenarios of who the responsible party should or shouldn't be that you may see when you review a project. So here's example one. A 5-lot subdivision has one BMP that is collecting stormwater runoff from all 5 lots. This BMP is on one of these 5 lots. Can that lot owner be the responsible party for the maintenance of this BMP? So think about that while I read example 2 here. A 5-lot subdivision has 5 BMPs, 1 BMP per lot. They only collect and treat runoff generated from their respective lot. Can the homeowners of each of these lots be the responsible party for each BMP that is on their own lot? So think about that for a second here. And the answer to both these questions is actually the same. It is no. An individual homeowner cannot be the responsible party for the BMP located in their own lot or one separate lot unless the individual homeowner owns all of these lots. So let's look at another example. Development of one lot that doesn't propose any subdivision and is a major development has one singular homeowner. Can this homeowner be responsible for maintenance of a BMP that is proposed for this development? And the answer to this example is actually yes. This individual homeowner can be responsible for the BMP that's located in their own lot because they are the sole owner of the entire development. So that's really the big key and difference here between this example and the first two. They have to be the sole owner of that entire development. All right, so moving on, as we have learned earlier, a good maintenance plan is going to include a lot of information. For this reason, my colleague created various templates for use by a designer. These templates can be customized. They're also created in such a way that they can be used as a teaching tool for reviewers and maintenance inspectors alike. Currently, they are being updated to reflect the new green infrastructure rules, so stay tuned for the updated versions of these templates as they are going to be very useful when you do conduct your reviews. Here is a representative sample of the various templates that can be used in a project. Anyone can go to the department's website, and there you'll click on maintenance guidance. At the top of the page is a brief introductory video, followed by a template of a maintenance plan. And below that is the field manual section. And here's an example of the field manual for a surface infiltration basin. Each BMP should have its own field manual because each of them has different functions and components that need to be inspected and maintained. The field manual templates include the components as shown on the left. That is the BMP overview, basic design information, visual aid for stormwater basin inspection, reference documents, inspection checklist, maintenance actions, preventative maintenance records, and corrective maintenance records. The designer modifies the contents of the field manual template with the design information of the BMPs incorporated in the development. The reviewer makes sure the information is correct, and the responsible party follows the field manual to perform maintenance. The municipality, depending on the ownership status, then follows the permit requirements to ensure maintenance is being performed. The reviewer should also make sure the inspection checklist has been customized to match design features on the construction plan and in the stormwater report. This is a partial screen capture of the infiltration basin inspection checklist log that can be found online in the maintenance guidance section of the Tier A guidance document. Again, these are currently being updated, so stay tuned for the newer versions of them. Another partial screen capture, and this is of the infiltration basin preventative maintenance. Logbooks are also available on the webpage for recording both preventative and corrective maintenance tasks performed by field personnel under the heading of maintenance logs and inspection records. These are what the maintenance staff may look at during periodic checkups of the maintenance records. For our municipal reviewers, if a private party applicant is missing logbooks, you can show them where to find the templates and have them use them to make it easier on the municipal inspectors. So this can all be found at the link at the top. Here's a screenshot of the maintenance webpage. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. It is very, very useful, highly recommended by all of us, and it spells things out very well and very clearly with detail on what you need to do if you're having trouble and need help, or even if you have questions on what to do. You should be able to find your answers there. There are also even links to further training, as well as videos that you can take a look at as well. So to sum things up, without proper long-term maintenance, the BMPs may not continue to function as designed, resulting in impacts to the environment. The permittee is required to ensure long-term operation, and that maintenance is being performed. A municipality may institute measures to facilitate these efforts. The first step towards meeting this permit requirement is a thorough review of the maintenance plan submitted with a development or redevelopment application. We also reviewed the 3 key elements of the maintenance plan, which is information, planning, and education. And you've all seen where guidance and field manual templates may be found on our department website. So again, please use those as a reference if you need help and or need answers. So thank you again for your attention. Here's how to contact me. Before I turn it over to our next presenter, I want to just remind you that you can type out questions through the chat and staff will be getting to them. Or you can always email your questions to me if you're more comfortable that way. Short or detailed question doesn't matter. We can give you a more formal answer there. So now I will check with Changyi. Do we have any questions that need to be addressed?
We do have questions in chat, but I will reply those questions in chat too. So please continue next presentation. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chingy. So thank you again for your attention. Our next speaker will be Dr. Richard McGee from the New Jersey Corporation for Advanced Technology, who will discuss the NJCAT DEP partnership for the verification and certification of manufactured treatment devices. So good afternoon, Dr. McGee.
Hi, everyone. This is Lisa. I'm going to help Dr. McGee and advance his slides for him. So, Dr. McGee, please let us know when it's okay to move on to the next slide. Dr. McGee? Okay, everyone, I apologize for the delay. Just one more moment. Dr. McGee, we're ready for you. Please let us know when we're all set to go. Okay, everyone, I apologize for the audio problems. I will do my best. All right, so shown on the screen are the topics that we're going to be covering today. Dr. McGee has been with the New Jersey Center for Advanced Technology for a long time and has fostered a terrific rapport with the department. In fact, he's done an excellent job of running the MTD verification program to meet the requirements of the stormwater management rule. And so We'll be covering the other items here. Of particular import is the misuse of certifications outside of the department. And then I do have some information regarding the program and moving forward. So in the late 1990s, discussions began between the commissioner at the time, which was Robert Shin, along with former Governor Jim Florio and Stevens Institute of Technology. And at the time, that was
Lisa,
President
can you?
Hal Ravichet. Hi, Dr. McGee, you figured it
Well,
out.
you guys had me muted, and
It's
finally,
weird.
Pierre, and you know, I was screaming, but you couldn't hear me. Okay, good
No,
start.
that's never happened before. I'm sorry.
Well,
So,
what can I tell you? You live long enough and these things happen. All right, let's continue on. Again, I apologize along the way. The beginning part of this presentation is going to cover some background material just to make sure that everybody understands the program. Then we're going to get into some greater details of what the program actually is, the kind of technologies that we have verified and you then in the department have certified. And then I'm going to give you some critical slides at the end, which are things you have to be aware of. This whole exercise started back in the late 1990s when then Commissioner Shin, former Governor Florio, and Stevens Technology President Hal Ravichet agreed that there ought to be a program to promote the development and promotion of innovative energy and environmental technologies, IEETs. That led to some legislation. Senate Bill 1750 established a technology verification program. The state appropriated $95,000 to kick off the program. And I'm proud to say that since that time, 25 years, the program has been sustained by fees paid to NJCAT from the manufacturers. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. This is the public law that set it up. It's the important point here is it laid out some very specific roles that had to be played by state of New Jersey, NJDEP, and NJCAT. And Elisa is correct. We have developed a great working relationship with the department. Next slide. Okay. Critical to this whole activity is the Performance Partnership Agreement, which has been in place for now 25 years. And it allows for a process for the department to consult and work with NJCAT to determine the application use of certain IETs. I will say that we have focused predominantly on the area of stormwater over the years, but we have not only done stormwater with the department. We've looked at things from soil washing to in situ remediation to removal of heavy metals from drinking water. We did an oversight into combined heat and power. In all these cases, these were technologies that were looking for some regulatory approval, relief, and we were able to work with the department to manage that. And of course, we let people know, which everybody now knows about this program. Next slide. Okay, this slide just kind of picks up what Rachel shared with us earlier this afternoon, excuse me, pointing out that there's a longstanding requirement stormwater compliance program to meet EPA's requirements on stormwater management. And this just is one part of that practice. And we'll see that now as we move into the next one. I'm trying to get caught up a little bit here. Next slide. Next slide.
are you seeing slide 7?
Okay. So the subject we're going to focus on are what are called manufactured treatment devices. And these are listed, and they're a subset of your best management practices, which we referred to in some of the earlier presentations, some of the manual. They're proprietary, prefabricated stormwater treatment systems that rely upon a variety of mechanisms to remove pollutants from stormwater runoff. These mechanisms can involve settling, filtration, both organic and inorganic media, vortex separation, vegetative components, membranes, and or any other appropriate technology that will remove pollutants from stormwater runoff. And this will then be the focus of the remainder of the presentation as MTDs as the stormwater best management practice found in the rules. Next slide. Okay, I think we know this in your NJAC 7.8, major development projects required to remove 80% of the project's TSS runoff on an annual basis. Your regulations, your 7.8 requires the use of green infrastructure BMPs that manage stormwater close to its source by either treating stormwater runoff through infiltration into the subsoil or by vegetation or soil. The NJAC 7.8 provides approved TSS removal rates for both MPVs and MTDs, and that comes through our program. And this is really very important point, that last bullet on the slide here, TSS removal rates for MTDs are verified by NJCAT and certified by NJDEP. Now, what does that mean? It means that we have jointly developed, NJCAT with NJDEP, test protocols that you can take one of these devices and test them in the laboratory under very stringent conditions, and you can generate data consistent with the protocol. NJCAT then goes through that data, ensures that the data is consistent with the protocol, and rates a verification report verifying that this technology has met the requirements. In the case of, and we'll see that in a minute, in the case of a hydrodynamic separator, minimum of 50% TSS removal for a filtration device, 80%. That report then gets sent off to the department, and the department then goes through it, does kind of a double check that I've done my homework, we've done our homework, and then issues a certification letter. So it's important because this is a big confusion to the industry, and industry misuses this confusion, as we'll see that I don't think so as much in New Jersey, but certainly in other states to, I'm going to say, confuse regulators. So we only verify, NJDEP certifies based on our verification report. Next slide. Okay, so quick overview. We conduct an independent third-party evaluation program to verify the performance claims of IETS. Program has strong national and international recognition. We are currently talking to and working with Australia, New Zealand, and we have just concluded a program with Germany. So I think both to NJCAT's credit and NJDEP's credit, this program is like the universal, almost becoming the national and international standard for MTDs for their performance. As I mentioned, the test protocols require TSS removal 50% for hydrodynamic separation and 80% for filtration. You'll also notice on this slide that there are dates 2021, 2023 toward 22, 2023. The protocols for testing basically were originally put in place for laboratory testing back in 2013. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. They were been improved, I believe, and updated in this most recent thing. And this is the current protocols which have to be adhered to. I will also tell you what happened to the ones that were verified and certified under the old protocol. So for New Jersey, you can only use MTDs that meet the requirements that have both been verified and certified. At this time, you have a choice then of 8 hydrodynamic separators, 15 filtration devices, and 13 green infrastructure technologies. It's interesting that over the course of the 25 years that I've been involved in the program, I've seen a switch away from hydrodynamic separators to filtration devices, and now filtration devices to the green infrastructure because of the regulations to treat the runoff as close to the source as possible. You can find, there's a link there on your DEP website where you can now get a copy of all the certified manufactured treatment devices. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, I now want to quickly go through 4 examples of technologies that have been verified, certified under the this program, 2 of which are no longer available in New Jersey because they were tested on the old protocol. But I think they give you an idea what a manufactured treatment device might look like. And it also will emphasize 2 other points I want to make later on. You'll notice this is a vault type technology. You would have an inlet pipe. First point I want to make is you'll notice it is in line with the outlet pipe. This obviously has implication from a site installation requirement. It involves a series of screens on the top and sedimentation chambers below these screens where the sediment accumulates along the way. You have turbulent deflectors in there, and that's there later on. So what you collect, you don't scour out. Let's go to the next slide, which will give you another view, not from the plane view, but a view down. You'll see here that the stormwater comes in. It's diverted through the diversion at the beginning, which is a screened separator where heavy debris, trash, and other things collect on the top of screens on the side. The other material goes through the center, as it goes through by separation, by sedimentation, it drops out into those chambers down below, which we saw in the previous thing, and then ultimately, quote, treated stormwater goes out the other side, which goes out the outside pipe. Now, as they say, this technology has not come back into the program. It was fine. It met the requirements of 2013. We'll talk a little bit more about the requirements of that. But this manufacturer has decided they're not going to pursue offering this technology anymore. Have gone on to other ones. And I will also point out there's a lot of innovation going on as we change the protocol. And I'm seeing newer designs, better performance designs coming in, which I think helps the overall attempts to maintain the environment as best we can do it. All right, let me move on to the next. By the way, there's one like this, however, another technology that's certified. This is a much more simpler technique. It's one that comes in into a manhole. You see it again comes in an inlet pipe. Again, I want to call your attention that the outlet pipe is 180 degrees opposite the inlet pipe. You will also notice that there's a flow splitter, which we'll see better on in the next one. You then have also an oil floatable skimmer, which basically will capture, unless you bypass it over the top of that skimmer, oil and floatables in the device. And you then have an outlet weir, which controls the flow, and an outlet pipe. The next picture will show you a better idea of how the flow patterns look like in the thing. So you see the flow comes in from the left. You've got that deflector plate. The deflector plate forces the flow to either go upward or downward. Once it gets behind that plate, due to the nature of the flow, it causes a vortex motion. The vortex motion increases the resonance time in there. That fluid then drops down below that skimmer plate, comes up the other side, goes through another weir plate on the other side, and then on the outlet. Again, this technology has not come back in, so it's in what shall I call it's been archived. You cannot use it in New Jersey. Doesn't mean it's not being sold elsewhere, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. Moving on. All right, this is an example of a filter system. Filters can be in different forms. In here, you see the flows coming in the inlet. There's a floatables baffle chamber. It kind of separates out the coarse materials in the beginning. It then goes into a vault where you have these cartridges. These cartridges, each, in this case, you see 2 cartridges. The fluid then flows into the cartridges and up the top, and you then get, or it may go down the top. I think it goes under drain this way here because that's where it goes out, and then it goes out the other side. The important point here to realize, but we take care of that for you, is that in the early parts of the game situation, there were manufacturers that would only test, let's say, for example, if that could handle 4 cartridges, would only test with 1 and would say, look how well we do. But if you think about it, there's a lot more settling area inside that vault area after you get out of the inlet chamber. And so you're not really filtering it, but you're hydrodynamic separating. And then when you go back to put 4 in there, you cannot increase your treatment rate 4 times with 1 cartridge because the fluid dynamics has been changed a lot. I'm a little skeptical, less so now, of how manufacturers try to, shall I say, game the system. I don't think they do it anymore. We try to allow it to do it. So I think the results we're getting are pretty good as regarding what we might expect in the field, with one caveat. Filters in particular are very subject to maintenance, and you had a really good tutorial, so to speak, on maintenance. And if they're not maintained properly, then filters are not going to work. And that scares a lot of municipalities when you talk about filters. Next slide. This is an example of a green infrastructure. This is a curb inlet you see on the left-hand side. It comes in, it flows over a media. And as you know, we've said before, and I will come back to that, soil. But this one has a tree planted on it. And you see these very, very common. They're obviously much smaller applications, but they also add for aesthetics, and it gets back to the issue of being able to treat the runoff, at this closer to the source than pumping it to someplace else. Next slide. This is a similar idea. It's in modular form, however. It is a vault system. And in this, rather than a downgoing, in the vault here, you see you've got a different cartridges. You see the flow coming in to the sides of the cartridges. They go to that center tube, drop down to the bottom, and then to the outlet. So that would be a vault with two cartridges, which also has the capability of sustaining plant growth. They call it a biofiltration chamber. Okay, that's just to give you an idea of the variations, and there are a lot of them. If you want to take a look at all the ones that have been verified, certified, you'll see that industry has gotten to be rather clever. All right, next slide. Okay, critical slide. Misuse of certifications. First point, not all NJCAT verified stormwater technologies are NJDEP certified. And you say, well, what does that mean? Did you screw up? And the answer is no. Some people choose to test with a different sediment particle size distribution. The protocols that are used in New Jersey have pretty stringent particle size distribution, and they have a what's called a D50 of 75 microns, and they basically have to have you have to have 50% of your particles below 50 microns. Here, these have larger D50s, maybe 110 rather than 75, and this occurs predominantly with HDS separators. Obviously, the advantage is it allows for a smaller unit. All certified MDTs must have been tested with the NJDEP sediment. There are currently 36% or 13 of the currently certified stormwater technologies that are GI certified. This number has grown steadily since 2020, about 2 per year. And again, the basis is because this is what is being promoted in New Jersey to keep that treatment close to the source. I pointed out this before, and you have to be careful of this because I see copies of site plans that other manufacturers police you guys incredibly. Only the HDS MTD configuration that was tested has been NJDEP certified. In other words, I showed you in many cases where it was tested with the inlet and outlet pipes being 180 degrees opposite. Sometimes that does not fit. That does not fit the requirement or easily fit the layout of the site plan. And so they want to bring the inlet in different than the outlet. They're not 100 degrees apart. Or they may want to have an inlet pipe, 2 inlet pipes coming into the same device. Or they may want to switch to a grade inlet coming down from the top. If that has not been tested, verified, and certified, it doesn't fit New Jersey. Now, I will tell you that the new protocol allows for testing for these various options. And one technology has already been certified where they can come in at quite a different range of one inlet that's not 180 degrees apart, okay? Basically 50 degrees to either side of the outlet pipe. I have a second one that has just came in this morning, which I have not even looked at yet. And that thinks they've been able to show in the laboratory to do that. So you will have options. You will see some technologies that will not be 180 degrees apart, but you got to check that that's what the verification and certification allowed. I have not yet seen a multiple inlet pipe. In other words, 2 inlet pipes, 1 outlet pipe tested. But if they can prove that the performance is the same as the original one, then they're good to go. And a great inlet, I can see would fit for one type of design I have, and I'm expecting to see that they're going to come in with it, some testing on a great inlet, because it obviously opens up the marketplace for them. So for reviewers, it's imperative to check the configuration shown on the plans matches the configuration tested, as noted in the certification letter and verification report. So if there's any one slide I'd want you to take away, this is the slide I'd like you to take away if you can do your job. Okay, next question. Next slide, excuse me. Okay. The other point is that the 2 things you have to know. An MTD cannot be used in series with another MTD or a media filter such to achieve an enhanced removal rate. In other words, you could not use two MTDs to get 80%. You'd have to use an MTD along with a some other BMP to be able to do it. Also, MTDs are certified for offline use. If they're certified for offline use, they cannot be used in inline. And the concern here is the following. An inline configuration means that this MTD may see a storm flow which is greater than the water quality design storm. Concern here is that sediment that has been captured may be washed out. So therefore, if you want to use it for online, you have to test a successful scour test. Most hydrodynamic separators pass that because they want that capability. Rarely does a filter system test for scour test. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how has this program evolved and where's it going? Well, we've expanded the technology verification database. If you go to our website, and we've given a lot of explanatory text, which I thought would answer everybody's question, but I actually have talked to a couple states where they've set me up on a webinar to explain the program to them because they follow it and they want to make sure they understand it. So we have the key category is laboratory verified and NJDEP certified, okay, which is the ones we were talking about in 3 categories. I will tell you that the green infrastructure category is a call that DEP makes. We basically we certified that it works as a filter device and removes 80%, and then DEP takes a look at it and decides whether or not it meets the requirement of the green infrastructure requirements, which are threefold. 1, it's treated by soil. 2, it's treated by vegetation. 3, it infiltrates. The infiltration requirement as NJDEP is interpreting it as you have to infiltrate 100%. Nobody has been able to do that. Soil is a question because if you look at your regs, they do not identify or the criteria as to what's a soil. It's clear that sand is not a soil, perlite is not a soil, but other things. So this has been somewhat of a challenge, if you'd like, but we now have got a working arrangement with NJDEP that they will pre-qualify a mix that if they meet the filtration, they will then go ahead and and certify it as a GI. In many cases, these companies are providing information that it will sustain vegetation. If you want to use a vegetation only, then you have to have 85% coverage, and the rest are pretty high. There's a category that's laboratory verified. These are ones that NJCAT verifies against the current protocols. But as I say, most cases use a larger particle size, D50, and that's because other states will accept it. Other states say, well, our sediment is not as stringent as New Jersey's, and we don't want to go to filters because of the maintenance requirements. So if you test for a D50 of 110, what's called OK 110 in many cases, we'll accept that, and for our state. Okay, there's a category for public review. Every report that I put together is subject to public review. I have a list of about 40 people, mostly industry-based people, that scrutinize that report. They get 30 days to do it, and if there's anything in there that they think is either overstated, anything I may have missed, they can hold up the verification report. So it's a pretty rigid process, and sometimes I wouldn't say keeps me up at night, but it does worry me. And then there are additional energy and environmental technologies, which are niche technologies that I've worked with DEP to come up with test protocols, and they're listed. I mentioned to you that things have been archived, transitioned as we went to new protocols, and there's a whole section on these that they're there for historical purposes. But if you've got nothing else to do on a late Saturday night or something, you can read some of these. Okay, next slide, which I believe is my final slide. Yeah. So a program moving forward, we're managing the implementation of the new HDS protocol. By the way, and I was remiss in not saying it, there was very little change in the filtration protocol because it pretty well tracked what we needed to do. But the industry was gaming the system. They were backing up sediment in the inlet pipe of the feeding the MTD and taking a credit for it. And as a consequence, that was not what the MTD was doing. It was what the pipe MTD or the tested system was doing. They can't get away with that anymore. I told you the idea is now we have piping options for the field. If they test, you've got one option there. Many of the technologies that were sunset decided not to retest, but are developing new technology instead. Again, to me, that's a plus. It says that we're moving this program forward, which is the active HDS technology development innovation underway. And already I'm beginning to develop a clarification document. Even with the new protocol, as you implement any new protocol, you find things that you didn't dot the I's and cross the T's, and we want that out there. There are parallel efforts going on outside of New Jersey. There's an ASTM committee that's been established to develop ASTM standards based on the NJDEP laboratory test protocols. I think they see this as a way of making money selling standards, but in any event, they do it. The verification certified database has been completed the transition to the 2023 protocol. That was just done in June of this year, so probably can take that off the shot. And probably the biggest unknown at this point, there is an initiative, Stormwater Testing and Evaluation for Products and Practices, STEP initiative. This is a heavily manufacturer-driven program. You don't get to vote unless you pay your dues. They do not have a rigorous program to to verify their products. And at this point, they haven't done anything there. They have just simply adopted those that the department has certified into their program. They would love to get their hands on this program, and whether or not they'll do that will be something that the future does. In the meantime, my goal is to work with the department to give the most robust and comprehensive program we had for these technologies, so we maintain the environment. Having said that, with that sales pitch, I will open myself to any questions. I see a lot of things came up, so I don't know. Maybe we'll have to offer them offline. Chang-Ai, anything?
Yes, there are some questions, but it's probably more about our rules. So I think technically and as the aspect managed by NJK, I think we are good. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Because if I can give you any help on answering those, as you know, just reach out to me. I'd be happy to do it. I always like questions because that means people are listening. or I don't want to attribute to the fact that I just didn't speak clearly. So, but it's good because it'll help me make better presentation in the future. Okay.
Thank you,
And
Dr.
that's,
McGee. If anyone would like to reach out to him, you're welcome to contact
yes.
him. His email address is here. And with that being said, we have a little less than a half hour left in our program for today, so we're going to move on to our first quiz. Thanks, Dr. McGee.
Okay. I'm sorry for the delay, but we're back. Thank you.
All righty. So, as I said, we're near the end of today, but first we have to take a quiz. So I hope that doesn't negatively influence your enjoyment of the training. So we rely on the quizzes to indicate your attendance, and it also lets us know how well we did with the instruction. So we don't score you individually, but we do use the score for the class to let us know, how we could do things better. So before we open the actual quiz so that you can take it, we're going to briefly cover how to find the quizzes. And there's two ways to find them. So for those of you with a smartphone, I'm going to display on the screen a QR code. It'll be on the next slide, and you'll be able to focus your camera on it and be taken to the quiz page on SurveyMonkey. But the quiz will not be open just yet. Okay, you could, of course, type any link I show on the screen into your phone's browser, and we can do that. But if you don't want to do that, you're going to have to open the quiz on your computer from the special training page that we set up for this particular session of the course. This is not the public-facing page with last year's presentation. All right, so remember, so that you're not accidentally kicked out of the Teams meeting, if you're doing that, you're going to have to either open another window or a tab and then enter the URL that I will show on the slide. We'll also put that information in the chat. Okay, so you're ready? All right, at the top of the slide in green is the link that I just mentioned that will take you to the special training page for this session of the class. However, don't use the link under the training tab of our main webpage, which looks like this. So if you're looking at slides and you're seeing the MTD presentation that we just had under Module 2, you're on the public-facing page. Instead, by going here, you should see MTDs are now under Module 1. Okay, so make sure you're on the correct page to take the quiz. All right. So now that we're all on the right page, you're going to scroll all the way down to find the quizzes. They're way down at the bottom. All right. Obviously, you'll click on quiz 1. And I would, if you're a Windows person, right click on it to open that in the new tab or window. All right. Because when you're done, you're going to have to toggle back to Teams so that you don't get kicked out of the meeting accidentally. Now, down here is the QR code that you can focus your camera on. If you want to take the smartphone approach. All right, but let's see if the quiz has been activated. Are we a go? Peter?
The quiz should be open now, yes.
Okay, so you click on the quiz, you'll go to SurveyMonkey, and if for some reason that link doesn't work, we're going to use the chat to post the links. Okay, but this is the link. Okay, so I know you want to rush in, but hear me out. You have to answer every question before you can advance to the next screen in the quiz. And finally, you have to remember to click done at the end. You'll only be able to take the quiz once and only until we close it. All right, and then afterwards, we will review the answers. And that's why the review portion is part of the course and it counts as instructional time. So don't miss it. All right, so here's everything on one page. Make sure the quiz is the quiz open? All right, when you're done, you're going to have a few minutes to grab a drink, but I'm going to ask for our moderator to tell me what time everyone should be back for the review.
I think because the time it's 3:40, so probably will take 15 minutes for quiz. Then we will start the review. Thank you.
Okay, so 15 minutes. It's 3:40. We'll start the review at 3:55. All
Oh,
right.
sorry, I saw it
No,
10 minutes. So yeah,
10
we
minutes.
have to.
Okay.
Yeah,
So be
sorry.
back at 3:50 so we can blast through the answers. You'll need the answers, okay? But if you still have problems, here's the email address and you should email us now if you have a problem. Okay? I'll leave this up and you may begin the quiz if you haven't already. Okay, it is 3:50 p.m. Shall we begin the review?
Sure, yeah. Please begin the
Okay.
review. So you may still working on your quiz if you have not finished them while we are reviewing those quiz. Thank you.
Okay, let's get going. All right. So the first three questions were just basically identifying information so that we can give you credit for attendance. Okay. The quiz questions start at number 4. So this is our first actual question. Okay. And for this, the answer is A. The National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, Phase 2 stormwater regulations require that the 6 minimum measures be implemented for small MS4s. Next question. Okay. The answer is C. The post-construction statewide basic requirement requires that the permittee develop, update,
exactly what the name of it is, 'cause she knows that.
implement, and enforce its stormwater management program to address
Listen now.
runoff.
I just finished.
I'm sorry, we have a live mic. And enforce a stormwater program to address runoff in new development and redevelopment, including reviewing projects to ensure they comply with the stormwater management rules. Okay, so question 6. The answer is D. The MS4 permittee is required to develop, update, implement, and enforce its stormwater management program to address runoff in new development and redevelopment. Question 7. The answer is B. Pursuant to NJAC 7:8-4.2, for the purposes of a municipal stormwater management plan and elements, which include the SCO, major development is limited to projects that ultimately disturb 1 or more acres of land. However, the municipality may adopt a more stringent definition of major development to align with the definition in the stormwater management rules. Question 8. The answer is B. Design stormwater management measures so that the post-construction peak runoff rates for the current and projected 210 and 100-year storms are 50, 75, and 80% respectively of the pre-construction runoff rates. All right, 9. The answer is A. I almost said B. Sorry about that. The New Jersey Water Quality Design Storm is a storm with a variable intensity that results in 1.25 inches of rainfall falling in 2 hours. Question 10. The answer is D. Infiltrating the increase in the projected 2-year storm volume or maintaining the average annual groundwater recharge are the 2 options for meeting the groundwater recharge standard. Sites in an urban redevelopment area are exempt from the groundwater recharge standard, but take note of the asterisk, okay? The definition of urban redevelopment area specifies that only previously developed portions of a site are exempt. Therefore, demonstration of any of these 3 things, if done properly, is acceptable. All right, question 11. The answer is B, false. All right, in tidal flood hazard areas, the water quantity standard does not apply only if the applicant can demonstrate that the increased volume of stormwater runoff will not increase flood damage below the point of discharge. In tidal flood hazard areas, stormwater runoff quantity analysis is required unless the design engineer demonstrates through hydrologic and hydraulic analysis that the increased volume, change in timing, or increased rate of the stormwater runoff, or any combination of these 3, will not result in additional flood damage below the point of discharge of the major development. No analysis is required if the stormwater is discharged directly into any ocean, bay, inlet, or the reach of any watercourse between its confluence with an ocean, bay, or inlet and downstream of the first water control structure. Question 12. The answer is B, false. BMPs from Table 5-2 can be used for stormwater runoff quantity only. For them to be used for stormwater runoff quality, a waiver or variance from NJAC 7:8-5.3 must be obtained. Question 13. The answer is A, true. A surface that is intended to be used by motor vehicles beyond an emergency situation should be considered as part of the total motor vehicle surface. However, in the case of an access road that's gated and accessible to motor vehicles only in an emergency, say, for example, the overall use of the surface does not allow for motor vehicles to use the surface, and the reviewing agency may determine that the area can be excluded from the total motor vehicle surface of the site. Question 14. The answer is D, all of the above. All of these things must be included in the maintenance plan. Question 15. The answer is D. The stormwater management rules at NJAC 7:8-5.8C state that the responsibility for maintenance shall not be assigned or transferred to the owner or tenant of an individual property in a residential development or project unless such owner or tenant owns or leases the entire residential development or project. 16. The answer is C. The stormwater management rules state that the responsible party must evaluate the effectiveness of the maintenance plan at least once per year and adjust the plan as needed. Question 17. The answer is A, true. Per subsection 5.8 of the Stormwater Management Rules, under item D, if the person responsible for maintenance is not a public agency, the maintenance plan and any future revisions shall be recorded upon the deed of record for each property on which the maintenance must be undertaken. Question 18. The answer is A, true. When the new NJDEP certifies an MTD, such as the hydrodynamic separator type, only the configuration as tested by NJCAT is certified to provide the indicated TSS removal rate. So manufacturers will frequently offer other configurations claiming certification. So these might include an inlet-outlet configuration that's not 180 degrees apart, and or multiple inlet pipes, or a graded inlet. So deviations from the tested and certified configuration are not NJDEP certified and cannot be used to achieve the TSS removal rate found in the certification letter. All right, so it's 2 minutes to spare. That's good. All right, do we have time for additional questions, or are we just going to wrap things up?
I think we answer most of the questions. So yeah, we can end up today's session. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks. Okay, so Module 2 is going to start again 1 o'clock on Thursday. The invitations will go out tomorrow. So say by lunchtime, maybe a little bit after you haven't received it, please email us so we don't have the issues that we had today for the few of you. We think it's something with your settings, but we don't want you to be late, okay? Because we have a lot to cover in Module 2. In the meantime, if you think of anything else, feel free to email us here, okay? If you have MTDs, you want to swap something out because you just don't want to pay for filters, email us. All right, we're open. All right, so thank you everyone for your attendance and participation. I saw a lot of really good questions, and I hope to see you all on Thursday for Module 2. Okay, so then if there are no more questions, then we will stop the recording and take our final attendance report.